The words cut through the Thanksgiving dinner like a blade. "You're absolutely worthless, Elena. When are you going to stop embarrassing this family?" But sometimes the cruelest dismissals become the foundation for the most extraordinary transformations. This is how one dinner table humiliation led to a 9-figure empire that left everyone speechless. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The smell of roasted turkey and bitter disappointment filled the dining room that November evening in 2018. Elena Rodriguez sat at the far end of the mahogany table, her plate barely touched, watching her family celebrate everything she was not. The chandelier cast warm light over faces animated with laughter and success stories, but none of that warmth reached her corner of the table. Her sister Victoria had just finished describing her latest promotion at the prestigious law firm downtown. Partner track, corner office, company car. The accolades flowed like wine, each one measured and weighed against Elena's conspicuous silence. Her brother Marcus followed with updates from his medical residency, the respect in their parents, voices growing thicker with each achievement he listed. Elena pushed mashed potatoes around her plate and tried to become invisible. At 28, she was the family outlier, the one who had dropped out of her MBA program to pursue what her father called nonsense. While her siblings climbed traditional ladders of success, Elena had spent the last 3 years building something they could not understand and refused to respect. "And what about you, Elena?" Her mother's voice carried that particular tone reserved for obligations rather than genuine interest. "Any updates from your little computer project?" The table grew quiet. Elena felt the familiar weight of their collective judgment pressing down like a physical force. Her throat tightened as she searched for words that might somehow bridge the gap between their expectations and her reality. "Actually, the platform is gaining traction," she began carefully. "We just secured our 15th client, and the recurring revenue model is proving." "Recurring revenue?" Her father's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Elena, you're 30 years old. When are you going to get serious about your life?" "I am serious," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "This business is growing. We're solving real problems for companies that—" "Problems?" Victoria interrupted, setting down her wine glass with authority. "The only problem I see is you wasting your education on some fantasy. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my colleagues ask about my family? I have to explain that my sister is unemployed." "I'm not unemployed. I'm an entrepreneur. You're delusional." Marcus leaned back in his chair, the picture of medical school confidence. "Entrepreneurship is a luxury for people who already have money. You're just avoiding real work." Elena's hands clenched in her lap. The familiar pattern was unfolding again, the same script they had performed at every family gathering for the past 3 years. Her attempts to explain her business met with rolled eyes and condescending smiles. Her victories were minimized, her struggles magnified, her dreams dismissed as childish fantasies. "Listen to me very carefully," her father said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had built a successful accounting practice through conventional means. "This computer nonsense has gone on long enough. Victoria can get you an interview at her firm, paralegal work, decent pay, benefits. It's time to grow up." "I don't want to work at a law firm," Elena said quietly. "I want to build something meaningful." The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother sighed dramatically, the sound heavy with years of accumulated disappointment. Victoria exchanged a look with Marcus, the kind of wordless communication that excluded Elena entirely. "Meaningful?" Her father's voice rose, the careful control finally cracking. "You know what's meaningful? Paying your bills. Contributing to society. Not living in your childhood bedroom at 30 because you refuse to get a real job." "I have a real job." "You have a hobby," Victoria snapped. "And frankly, it's pathetic. Do you know what people say about our family? They feel sorry for mom and dad because their daughter can't function in the real world." Elena felt something crack inside her chest, a fissure that had been growing wider with each dismissal, each rolled eye, each time her family had chosen to see her as a failure, rather than someone fighting to build something extraordinary. The words she had swallowed for years began to rise in her throat. "You know what's pathetic?" she said, her voice gaining strength. "The fact that none of you have ever asked what I'm actually building. You've never asked to see the platform, never asked about the clients, never showed one moment of curiosity about the work I pour my heart into every single day." "Because it's not real work," her father said flatly. "It's a phase. A very expensive, very embarrassing phase. Elena," her mother added with false gentleness, "we love you. But this fantasy has to end. You're not Mark Zuckerberg. You're not going to build the next Facebook. You're just a girl with a computer science degree who's afraid of the real world." The words hit like physical blows. Elena looked around the table at the faces of people who were supposed to love and support her, and all she saw was contempt masked as concern. These were the people who had raised her, who knew her better than anyone, and they saw nothing but failure when they looked at her life. "You want to know what I think?" Marcus said, cutting through the silence. "I think you're selfish. Mom and Dad have supported you for 3 years while you play entrepreneur. They're approaching retirement, and instead of helping them, you're draining their resources for your fantasy." "I've never asked them for money," Elena began. "You live in their house," Victoria interrupted. "You eat their food. You use their electricity while you sit in that room pretending to run a business. You're a 30-year-old woman acting like a teenager. And the worst part," her father continued, his voice heavy with disappointment, "is that you don't even see how selfish you're being. Your siblings are building real careers, contributing to society, making their parents proud. You're just an embarrassment." The final word hung in the air like a verdict. Elena felt the blood drain from her face as the weight of their collective judgment settled over her. 3 years of 18-hour days, of learning to code, of building client relationships, of fighting through rejections and setbacks, reduced to a single word: embarrassment. "You know what?" her father said, pushing back from the table. "I'm done pretending this is going to work out. Elena, you have until the end of the year to get a real job, or you need to find somewhere else to live. This family doesn't have room for people who refuse to grow up." The ultimatum landed like a physical blow. Elena stared at her father, searching his face for any sign of the man who had once encouraged her dreams, who had cheered at her high school graduation, who had told her she could be anything she wanted. That man was gone, replaced by someone who saw her as nothing but a burden. 60 days, he continued. "Get serious about your life, or get out." Elena's mother nodded in agreement. "It's for your own good, sweetheart. Sometimes tough love is the only way to help someone face reality." Victoria smiled with satisfaction. "Finally. Maybe now you'll stop embarrassing us and start acting like an adult." Marcus raised his wine glass in a mock toast. "To Elena's new chapter in the real world." Elena pushed back from the table, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the room like fingernails on a chalkboard. She looked at each of them in turn, memorizing their faces, their expressions of smug certainty, their absolute conviction that they knew what was best for her life. "You're all wrong about me," she said quietly, "and someday you're going to regret this night." "Oh, please," Victoria laughed. "Don't be dramatic. We're trying to help you." Elena walked toward the stairs, feeling their eyes on her back. Behind her, the conversation resumed as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just dismantled her dreams and delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. In her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of teenage dreams and adult ambitions, Elena sat on her bed and stared at her laptop screen. The platform she had built glowed softly in the darkness, lines of code representing thousands of hours of work they would never acknowledge. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Another client inquiry, the 15th that month. Companies were finding her solution, recognizing its value, willing to pay for the efficiency it created. But downstairs, her family saw only failure because her success didn't fit their narrow definition of achievement. Elena opened her banking app and stared at the numbers that told a different story. 3 years of careful reinvestment, of choosing growth over immediate comfort, of believing in something bigger than their limited vision. The balance wasn't extraordinary yet, but it represented something they couldn't understand: potential. She pulled out a notebook and began writing, not code this time, but a plan. 60 days to prove them wrong. 60 days to transform their dismissal into the fuel that would drive her to heights they couldn't imagine. 60 days to show them that the daughter they called worthless was about to become everything they never thought possible. The house grew quiet around her as her family settled into their comfortable certainty, convinced they had done the right thing, convinced they were saving her from herself. They had no idea they had just awakened something unstoppable. Elena stared at her reflection in the dark window, seeing not the failure they described, but the woman she was about to become. Their words had been meant to break her, to force her into their mold of acceptable success. Instead, they had freed her from the last vestiges of seeking their approval. She had 60 days to prove them wrong. And she intended to use every single one of them. The next morning would mark the beginning of the most transformative period of her life, though she didn't know it yet. The humiliation of that dinner would become the foundation of an empire that would force her family to confront the magnitude of their mistake. The worthless daughter they had dismissed would become the millionaire they would beg to acknowledge. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But that transformation would require more than anger or wounded pride. It would require everything she had learned about resilience, about turning rejection into rocket fuel, about building something so undeniable that even the harshest critics would be forced to see the truth. Elena closed her laptop and prepared for sleep, knowing it might be the last night she ever spent as the family disappointment. Tomorrow she would begin the journey that would transform her from the daughter they were ashamed of into the success story they could never have imagined. The dinner table humiliation had ended, but Elena Rodriguez's real story was just beginning. The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., the same time it had every morning for the past 3 years. But on this morning, the sound carried different weight. Elena Rodriguez rolled out of bed with the precision of a soldier preparing for war, because that was exactly what she was doing. The battlefield was her business, the enemy was doubt, and victory was no longer optional. The house remained silent as she padded downstairs to the kitchen. Her family slept peacefully in their beds, secure in their conviction that they had delivered necessary tough love the night before. They had no idea that their ultimatum had just awakened something extraordinary. Elena made coffee in the dark, the familiar ritual grounding her in the reality of what she needed to accomplish. 60 days. 8 weeks and 4 days. 1,440 hours to transform their perception of her worth from worthless to undeniable. She carried her laptop to the kitchen table and opened it to the familiar glow of her platform dashboard. Innovate Corp, Streamline Max, Efficiency First, and 12 other companies had trusted her solution to optimize their operations. The recurring revenue streams showed steady growth, but steady would not be enough. Not anymore. Elena opened a fresh document and began typing, not code this time, but strategy. The dinner confrontation had crystallized something that had been building for months. She had been playing it safe, accepting gradual growth when she should have been pursuing exponential transformation. Her family's rejection had inadvertently freed her from the fear of failure, because they already considered her a failure. The first strategic decision was expansion. Her platform automated workflow management for mid-sized companies, but she had been conservative in her market approach. The enterprise sector remained untapped, representing contracts worth 50 times her current average deal size. The technical infrastructure existed to scale upward, but she had hesitated to pursue Fortune 500 clients because rejection from that level would have felt catastrophic. Now, rejection felt like background noise. Her family had already delivered the worst verdict possible. Corporate clients could hardly be more brutal than her own dinner table. Elena pulled up the contact information for Tech Titan Industries, a multinational corporation whose operations inefficiencies she had studied extensively. Their current workflow management system cost them approximately $2 million annually in lost productivity. Her platform could eliminate 80% of that waste while reducing their operational overhead by 30%. The math was compelling, but compelling mathematics had never guaranteed successful sales. Elena knew she needed to approach this differently, with the kind of confidence that comes from having nothing left to lose. She spent the next 4 hours crafting a proposal that was part business plan, part manifesto. Instead of requesting a meeting to discuss potential improvements, she documented their specific inefficiencies, quantified the exact cost of their current approach, and presented her solution as an inevitable optimization rather than an optional upgrade. The proposal concluded with a statement that would have terrified her 3 months earlier. I will guarantee a 40% improvement in operational efficiency within 90 days of implementation, or I will refund your entire investment and personally compensate you for any productivity loss during the transition period. Elena stared at the words on her screen. The guarantee represented everything she had built over 3 years. If Tech Titan accepted and she failed to deliver, she would lose not just the contract, but potentially her entire business. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was accepting the slow growth that her family interpreted as stagnation. She attached the proposal to an email and hovered her cursor over the send button. This single click would begin a chain of events that would either validate her belief in herself or confirm her family's assessment of her capabilities. Elena thought about Victoria's smug smile, Marcus's dismissive laughter, her father's ultimatum. Their voices echoed in her mind, reminding her that she was delusional, that entrepreneurship was a fantasy, that she needed to accept reality and get a real job. She clicked send. The email disappeared into the digital ether, carrying with it the most aggressive business proposal she had ever written. Elena closed her laptop and returned to her room, knowing that Tech Titan would receive her message within the hour and that her life would change based on their response. Over the next 3 days, Elena's behavior shifted in ways her family began to notice. She stopped participating in their conversations about her future. When her mother suggested scheduling interviews at Victoria's law firm, Elena simply nodded and continued working. When her father mentioned apartment listings for her upcoming move, she responded with non-committal agreement. Her silence unnerved them more than her previous arguments had. They interpreted her compliance as acceptance, evidence that their tough love approach was working. Elena allowed them to maintain this illusion, while she systematically dismantled every assumption they had made about her limitations. On Thursday morning, her phone rang with a number she did not recognize. Elena answered with professional precision, expecting another sales call or client inquiry. Ms. Rodriguez? This is Jonathan Mitchell, Chief Technology Officer at Tech Titan Industries. I received your proposal regarding our operational efficiency challenges. Elena's heart rate accelerated, but her voice remained steady. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for calling. I hope you found the analysis helpful. Helpful is an understatement. Your assessment of our workflow bottlenecks was more comprehensive than anything our internal consulting team has produced. I would like to schedule a presentation for next week. Would Tuesday afternoon work for your schedule? Elena glanced at her calendar, which contained exactly 0 conflicts, because she had been methodically clearing space for opportunities that might emerge from her aggressive expansion strategy. Tuesday afternoon would be perfect. Excellent. I should mention that our CEO will be attending, along with our entire executive leadership team. This would be a significant implementation if we move forward. Elena's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained controlled. I look forward to presenting to your team. After ending the call, Elena sat in her childhood bedroom and processed the magnitude of what had just occurred. Tech Titan Industries was a $12 billion corporation. Their annual technology budget exceeded the gross domestic product of small nations. A successful contract with them would not just validate her business model, it would transform her company from a promising startup into a major player in the enterprise software market. The presentation would require preparation unlike anything she had attempted previously. Elena spent the weekend building a demonstration that showcased not just her platform's capabilities, but its potential impact on an organization of Tech Titan's complexity. She created detailed financial projections, workflow optimization models, and implementation timelines. She anticipated every possible objection and prepared responses that demonstrated not just technical competence, but strategic understanding of enterprise-level challenges. More importantly, she prepared herself mentally for the possibility of spectacular failure. The old Elena would have been paralyzed by the stakes involved. The new Elena, forged by family rejection and powered by the determination to prove them wrong, approached the opportunity with calculated aggression. On Monday evening, As Elena printed presentation materials and reviewed her notes one final time, her mother knocked on her bedroom door. "Elena, can we talk?" Elena looked up from her laptop. Of course. Her mother entered hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation she was about to initiate. "I wanted to check on you. You've been very quiet since Thanksgiving dinner." "I've been working." "Working on what? The job applications Victoria sent you?" Elena smiled without warmth. "Something like that." Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, her expression mixing concern with frustration. "Honey, I know last week was difficult, but we're trying to help you. This fantasy has gone on long enough." "What if it's not a fantasy?" The question caught her mother off guard. "Elena, we've been through this. You're a smart girl, but you're not equipped for this kind of thing. Business is complicated. It requires experience, connections, capital. You have none of those things." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "You're probably right." Her mother's relief was visible. "I'm glad you're starting to see reason. Victoria scheduled you an interview for Thursday morning. Entry-level position, but it's a good start. I'll keep that in mind." After her mother left, Elena returned to her presentation preparation. The conversation had reminded her exactly why success was no longer optional. Her family's certainty about her limitations had become a challenge she could not ignore. The next morning, Elena dressed in her only business suit, a navy ensemble she had purchased for her MBA interviews years earlier. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw not the family disappointment they described, but a woman preparing to deliver the most important presentation of her life. The drive to Tech Titan's headquarters took 45 minutes through downtown traffic. Elena used the time to review her key points one final time, transforming nervous energy into focused determination. The Tech Titan building rose 37 floors above the city center, its glass facade reflecting the afternoon sun like a tower of ambition. Elena parked in the visitor section and walked through the marble lobby, her heels clicking against the polished floor with the rhythm of approaching destiny. The security guard directed her to the executive floor, where she was met by Jonathan Mitchell himself. He was younger than she had expected, probably mid-40s, with the kind of confident bearing that came from making decisions that affected thousands of employees. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming in today. I have to say, your proposal generated quite a bit of discussion among our leadership team." Elena shook his hand firmly. "I hope that discussion was productive. It was certainly interesting. Follow me." The team is assembled in our main conference room. They walked through corridors lined with awards and photographs documenting Tech Titan's corporate history. Elena absorbed the atmosphere of success, the tangible evidence of what was possible when vision met execution. The conference room contained a mahogany table that could seat 20 people comfortably. 8 executives were already seated, their attention focused on Elena as she entered. She recognized several faces from business publications, leaders whose decisions influenced entire industries. "Everyone, this is Elena Rodriguez, the developer of the optimization platform we discussed." Elena distributed her presentation materials and connected her laptop to the room's projection system. As her platform's interface filled the wall-mounted screen, she felt the weight of their collective attention. "Thank you for your time today. I want to begin by addressing the obvious question. Why should a company of Tech Titan sophistication consider a solution developed by someone you've never heard of?" The directness of her opening caught their attention. Elena could see surprise in several faces, followed by curiosity about where she was going with such an unconventional start. The answer is simple. Your current workflow management system was designed by committee, implemented by consultants, and maintained by people who will never face the consequences of its inefficiencies. My platform was built by someone who understands that every percentage point of improvement translates directly into competitive advantage. For the next 45 minutes, Elena demonstrated not just technical capabilities, but strategic insight. She showed them how her platform could eliminate the communication bottlenecks that cost them millions annually. She quantified the productivity gains that would result from automated task prioritization. She presented implementation timelines that accounted for their complex organizational structure. Most importantly, she answered their questions with the confidence of someone who had spent years thinking about these problems, not someone who had developed generic solutions hoping to find applicable markets. When the presentation concluded, the room remained silent for several moments. Elena gathered her materials calmly, giving them space to process what they had seen. Ms. Rodriguez, the CEO, finally said, "This is the most comprehensive optimization analysis we've received. How quickly could you begin implementation?" Elena had prepared for this question. Full implementation would require 6 months. However, I can deliver measurable improvements in your highest priority departments within 30 days. And the investment required? Elena named a figure that represented more money than she had ever seen in her life, but which she knew was reasonable given the value they would receive. The number hung in the air like a test of her confidence. That includes ongoing support, system updates, and the performance guarantee I outlined in my proposal. The executives exchanged glances, communicating in the wordless language of corporate decision-making. Elena waited, knowing that the next 60 seconds would determine whether her gamble had succeeded. "Ms. Rodriguez," the CEO said finally, "I believe we have a deal." Elena maintained her professional composure, but inside, everything shifted. The contract would transform her business overnight, providing the capital and credibility to pursue opportunities she had only imagined. More importantly, it would prove that her family's assessment of her worth had been catastrophically wrong. As she drove home that evening, Elena thought about the dinner conversation that had started this transformation. Her family had intended to break her spirit, to force her into their mold of acceptable success. Instead, they had freed her to pursue the kind of extraordinary achievement that would make their criticism irrelevant. She had 54 days remaining in their ultimatum. Elena Rodriguez was about to show them what worthless really looked like. The Tech Titan contract changed everything overnight, though Elena Rodriguez kept this transformation hidden from her family with deliberate precision. The signed agreement represented more than financial success. It validated every decision she had made over the past 3 years, every risk she had taken while her family questioned her judgment, every moment she had chosen to believe in her vision when others saw only delusion. The contract terms required initial payment within 10 business days of signing. Elena watched her business banking account transform from modest stability to genuine wealth as the first installment arrived. The number on her screen represented more money than her father's accounting practice generated in 6 months, more than Victoria earned in 2 years at her prestigious law firm, more than Marcus would see during his entire medical residency. Elena stared at the figure and felt something shift inside her chest. Not relief, not vindication, but clarity. The worthless daughter her family had dismissed at Thanksgiving dinner now controlled resources that dwarfed their individual successes. Yet she felt no immediate urge to celebrate or confront them with this reality. Instead, she felt the focused determination of someone who had discovered their true capabilities and intended to push them to their absolute limits. The Tech Titan implementation would require her complete attention for the next 90 days. Elena hired her first employees the following week, 3 software engineers whose expertise complemented her own. She moved her operations out of her childhood bedroom and into a proper office space downtown, though she maintained her residence at her parents' house to preserve the illusion that nothing fundamental had changed. Her family interpreted her increased absence as job-hunting activity. When Elena left early each morning and returned late each evening, they assumed she was pursuing the conventional employment opportunities they had demanded. Her mother began speaking more kindly to her, convinced that tough love had finally produced the desired results. Her father mentioned apartment hunting with decreased urgency, believing that steady employment would soon provide Elena with the income necessary for independent living. Victoria took credit for Elena's apparent transformation, telling colleagues that her intervention had saved her sister from entrepreneurial delusion. Marcus offered condescending encouragement, suggesting that Elena's eventual entry into the traditional workforce would teach her valuable lessons about reality. Elena absorbed their commentary without reaction, focusing instead on the technical challenges of scaling her platform for enterprise deployment. The The Tech Titan project required capabilities she had never tested at such magnitude. Their operations encompassed multiple countries, thousands of employees, and workflow complexities that demanded innovative solutions. She approached these challenges with the methodical intensity of someone who understood that failure was not acceptable. The guarantee she had offered Tech Titan meant that underperformance would cost her everything she had built. More importantly, success would establish her reputation in the enterprise software market and create opportunities for expansion she could barely imagine. The first phase of implementation focused on Tech Titan's North American operations, specifically their manufacturing division, where inefficiencies cost approximately $50,000 daily in lost productivity. Elena's platform needed to integrate with existing systems while improving workflow coordination among departments that had operated independently for decades. She spent 16-hour days writing code, testing integrations, and refining user interfaces. Her newly hired engineers brought expertise in areas where her knowledge was limited, allowing the team to tackle problems that would have been impossible for Elena to solve alone. The collaborative dynamic reminded her why she had chosen entrepreneurship over traditional employment. Building something together created energy and purpose that no corporate position could match. 3 weeks into the implementation, Jonathan Mitchell called with the first performance report. Elena answered with the controlled anxiety of someone whose entire future depended on the next 60 seconds of conversation. Elena, I wanted to update you on our preliminary results. The manufacturing division has shown a 37% improvement in task completion time since your platform went live. Elena's relief was profound but carefully contained. That falls within our projected range. Are there areas where you're seeing resistance to the new workflows? Actually, the opposite. Department managers are requesting expedited rollout to their teams. The productivity improvements are so obvious that people want access immediately, rather than waiting for the scheduled implementation phases. This response exceeded Elena's most optimistic projections. Enterprise software implementations typically encountered resistance from employees who viewed new systems as additional complications rather than improvements. The fact that Tech Titan's workforce was actively requesting access suggested that her platform addressed genuine pain points rather than creating artificial solutions. We'd like to accelerate the timeline, Mitchell continued. How quickly could you expand the deployment to our European operations? Elena reviewed her development schedule mentally. The European expansion had been planned for month 4 of the implementation, but accelerating that timeline would require additional resources and potentially compromise other commitments. I can have the European systems online within 6 weeks if I expand my development team. That would require adjusting the cost structure we discussed. Send me a revised proposal. Based on what we're seeing, the additional investment would pay for itself within the first quarter of operation. After ending the call, Elena sat in her new office and contemplated the magnitude of what was occurring. Tech Titan's enthusiasm for expanding the implementation ahead of schedule represented validation beyond her original projections. The platform was not merely meeting expectations, but exceeding them sufficiently to justify accelerated investment. She spent the afternoon calculating the financial implications of the expanded contract. The additional revenue would enable her to hire senior developers, invest in advanced infrastructure, and pursue opportunities with other Fortune 500 companies. More importantly, it would establish her platform as a proven solution in the enterprise market, creating credibility that no amount of marketing could purchase. Elena revised her business plan that evening, projecting growth scenarios that had seemed impossible just months earlier. The Tech Titan success was creating momentum that could transform her small startup into a major player in the optimization software industry. The worthless daughter her family had dismissed was building something that could eventually challenge established technology companies for market dominance. Her parents noticed her improved mood during the limited time she spent at home. They attributed this change to her apparent progress in finding traditional employment, congratulating themselves on the effectiveness of their intervention. Elena allowed them to maintain this interpretation while she systematically built the foundation for success that would eventually make their opinions irrelevant. The hiring process for additional developers introduced Elena to a different category of professional challenge. The candidates she needed were experienced engineers, currently employed by major technology companies, professionals who would require significant incentives to join an unknown startup. Elena found herself competing for talent against corporations with established reputations and unlimited budgets. She approached these recruitment challenges with the same aggressive confidence that had won the Tech Titan contract. Instead of apologizing for her company's small size, she emphasized the opportunity to build something revolutionary from the ground up. Instead of competing on salary alone, she offered equity stakes that could become extraordinarily valuable if the company achieved its growth projections. Her recruitment strategy proved effective. Within 2 weeks, she had hired 4 additional engineers, including a senior architect from Microsoft who became her lead developer for the European expansion. These professionals brought not only technical expertise, but industry connections that would accelerate her company's growth in ways she was only beginning to understand. The expanded team required larger office space and sophisticated development infrastructure. Elena signed a lease for premium office space in the technology district, investing in the kind of professional environment that would attract additional talent and impress potential clients. The monthly cost exceeded her previous annual expenses, but the Tech Titan revenue made such investments not only possible but necessary for continued growth. Her transformation from bedroom entrepreneur to technology executive required adjustments she had not anticipated. Managing a team of experienced professionals demanded leadership skills she was still developing. Making decisions that affected other people's careers created pressure different from the individual risk-taking that had characterized her early entrepreneurial efforts. Elena approached these challenges with characteristic determination, reading extensively about management theory and seeking advice from business mentors who understood the complexities of scaling technology companies. She discovered that entrepreneurial success required not only technical competence and market insight, but the ability to inspire others to believe in her vision sufficiently to stake their own careers on its achievement. The European expansion proceeded ahead of schedule, with Elena's team delivering system integrations that exceeded Tech Titan's performance requirements. The success in multiple geographic markets demonstrated that her platform could adapt to different regulatory environments and cultural workplace preferences, capabilities that would be essential for pursuing additional international clients. 6 weeks after the accelerated European deployment, Jonathan Mitchell called with news that would transform Elena's business trajectory permanently. "Elena, I need to share something confidential. Our CEO has been discussing your platform with other industry leaders. 3 Fortune 500 companies have requested demonstrations based on our results. Would you be interested in pursuing those opportunities?" Elena felt her heart rate accelerate, but her voice remained professionally controlled. "Absolutely. What timeline are they considering?" "They want to see presentations within the next month. I should mention that these are significantly larger implementations than ours. We're talking about companies with global operations and budgets that make our investment look modest." Elena absorbed this information while calculating the implications. Multiple Fortune 500 clients would establish her company as a major force in the enterprise software market. The revenue potential was extraordinary, but the operational challenges would require expanding her team and capabilities far beyond their current scale. "I'll be ready," she said simply. After ending the call, Elena walked to her office window and looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere in those buildings, her family continued their daily routines, convinced that their tough love intervention had finally guided their wayward daughter toward conventional success. They had no idea that the worthless failure they had dismissed was about to enter negotiations that could make her one of the youngest female technology executives in the industry. Elena thought about the Thanksgiving dinner that had catalyzed this transformation. Her father's ultimatum had given her 60 days to get serious about her life. She had 42 days remaining, and she was about to demonstrate just how serious she had become. The next phase would require everything she had learned about business, about leadership, about converting vision into reality. Elena Rodriguez was no longer the family disappointment seeking approval. She was a technology executive preparing to compete with established industry leaders for contracts that would define her company's future. Her family still saw her as the daughter who needed guidance and correction. Soon they would discover that the woman they had tried to fix was already broken, only in the sense that she had broken free from their limitations and built something extraordinary in the process. The phone rang again. Another Fortune 500 company requesting a demonstration. Elena answered with the confidence of someone who had learned to transform rejection into rocket fuel and was about to show the world what happened when potential was finally allowed to flourish without constraint. The boardroom at Global Dine Corporation commanded a view of the financial district that stretched to the horizon, towers of glass and steel reaching toward a sky that seemed infinite with possibility. Elena Rodriguez stood at the head of the polished conference table, her presentation materials arranged with military precision, facing 12 executives whose combined decisions influenced markets across continents. This was her third Fortune 500 presentation in 10 days, each one larger in scope and more complex in requirements than the last. The momentum generated by Tech Titan's success had created opportunities that challenged every assumption Elena had held about the pace of business growth. Companies that typically required months of evaluation were requesting immediate demonstrations and accelerated implementation timelines. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had learned to command attention in rooms where she was invariably the youngest person present. Global Dine currently loses approximately $8 million annually to workflow inefficiencies that my platform can eliminate within 6 months of implementation. The statement landed with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Elena had learned that enterprise executives responded to directness rather than diplomatic preambles. They wanted to understand the financial impact before considering technical capabilities, and she had structured her presentations accordingly. She clicked to the next slide, revealing a detailed analysis of Global Dine's operational bottlenecks that had required 2 weeks of research to compile. Elena had studied their quarterly reports, analyzed their organizational structure, and identified specific departments where her platform could deliver measurable improvements. Your manufacturing division operates with coordination delays that extend production cycles by an average of 18%. Your customer service department processes inquiries through 7 different systems that require manual data transfer. Your supply chain management relies on email communication for time-sensitive decisions that affect million-dollar contracts. Elena watched their faces as she spoke, noting which executives recognized the problems she described and which seemed surprised by her level of insight into their operations. The research had been exhaustive, but it demonstrated something more valuable than technical competence. It showed that she understood their business at a strategic level, rather than simply offering generic solutions. My platform addresses these inefficiencies through integrated workflow automation that eliminates redundant processes while maintaining the oversight capabilities your compliance requirements demand. The result is not just improved efficiency, but enhanced decision-making capability at every operational level. The demonstration that followed showcased her platform's capabilities using scenarios modeled specifically on Global Dine's operations. Elena had learned to customize each presentation extensively, showing potential clients exactly how her solution would function within their existing infrastructure, rather than requiring them to imagine abstract benefits. The questions that followed revealed the sophistication of her audience. These executives had evaluated countless technology solutions and possessed the expertise to identify weaknesses in implementation plans or unrealistic performance projections. Elena answered each inquiry with detailed explanations that demonstrated both technical knowledge and practical understanding of enterprise-scale challenges. Ms. Rodriguez, the CEO, finally said, "Your analysis of our operational inefficiencies is remarkably comprehensive. How did you acquire such detailed knowledge of our internal processes?" Elena had anticipated this question and prepared a response that would reinforce her credibility rather than revealing the extent of her research. Public information reveals more about operational efficiency than most companies realize. Quarterly reports, regulatory filings, and industry analysis provide sufficient data to identify systemic inefficiencies if you understand what patterns to recognize. And you learn to recognize these patterns through your previous implementations, correct? Each client engagement has expanded my understanding of how different industries structure their operations and where optimization opportunities typically exist. The meeting concluded with a request for a detailed implementation proposal, the 4th such request Elena had received that month. As she packed her materials and prepared to leave, the CEO approached her privately. "Ms. Rodriguez, I have to ask, how long have you been running your company?" Elena met his gaze directly. 3 years. 3 years. He seemed to be processing this information. "And you're how old?" 28. The executive nodded slowly, clearly reconciling her age and experience with the sophistication of her business approach. Remarkable. We'll be in touch within the week. Elena left the Global Dine building and walked to her car, processing the implications of another successful presentation. The pattern was becoming clear. Enterprise executives were responding not just to her platform's capabilities, but to her understanding of their strategic challenges. She was competing successfully against established technology companies because she offered something they could not: solutions designed specifically for their operational realities rather than generic products requiring extensive customization. The drive back to her office provided time to reflect on how dramatically her professional life had transformed in just 6 weeks. The woman who had been dismissed as worthless at her family's dinner table was now presenting to Fortune 500 executives and winning contracts that established technology companies would consider significant achievements. Her team had expanded to 12 employees, including senior developers, a sales coordinator, and a project manager whose experience with enterprise implementations had proven invaluable. The office space that had seemed enormous when she first signed the lease now felt cramped as her company grew beyond her initial projections. Elena arrived at the office to find her lead developer, Sarah Chen, waiting with updates on the European expansion projects. The acceleration of multiple implementations simultaneously had created coordination challenges that required constant attention to prevent scheduling conflicts or resource allocation problems. The global tech deployment is proceeding ahead of schedule, Sarah reported. Their IT department has been exceptionally cooperative, and we should complete the integration testing by Thursday. However, the Innovate Core project has encountered some resistance from their legacy system administrators. Elena nodded, making notes about the coordination requirements. Managing multiple Fortune 500 implementations simultaneously required organizational capabilities she was still developing. Each client demanded the attention and resources of a primary engagement, but her company was now juggling 4 major projects, with additional presentations scheduled for the following week. Schedule a call with Innovate Corp's technical team for tomorrow morning. We need to address their concerns before they become implementation delays. Elena spent the remainder of the afternoon reviewing financial projections that reflected her company's explosive growth. The revenue from confirmed contracts exceeded her most optimistic projections from 6 months earlier. More importantly, the profit margins remained healthy despite the increased costs associated with rapid expansion. She had learned to reinvest aggressively in capabilities that would support continued growth, rather than extracting profits for personal use. The money flowing into her business bank accounts represented potential rather than immediate wealth, resources that could fuel expansion into markets she was only beginning to explore. The technical challenges of scaling her platform for multiple enterprise clients simultaneously had required innovations Elena had not anticipated when she first developed her solution. The algorithms that managed workflow optimization needed to adapt to different organizational structures, regulatory requirements, and cultural preferences across international markets. Her development team had risen to these challenges with creativity and technical excellence that validated her hiring decisions. The professionals she had recruited from established technology companies brought not only expertise but enthusiasm for building something revolutionary rather than maintaining existing systems. That evening, Elena remained at the office long after her team had departed, working on a strategic plan that would guide her company's growth over the next 12 months. The opportunities emerging from her current success required systematic planning to avoid the operational chaos that could result from accepting more business than her organization could effectively manage. She projected hiring requirements, infrastructure investments, and market expansion possibilities that reflected ambitions she would have considered impossible just months earlier. The worthless daughter her family had dismissed was planning a business trajectory that could establish her as a significant force in the enterprise software industry. Elena's phone buzzed with a text message from her mother asking about her job search progress. The irony was profound. While her family assumed she was struggling to find conventional employment, she was actually managing negotiations that involved more money than they would collectively earn in their entire careers. She had 38 days remaining in her father's ultimatum. Elena Rodriguez was approaching the deadline with resources and credibility that would make their judgment irrelevant, but she had not yet decided how to reveal the magnitude of their miscalculation. The following morning brought a call that would accelerate her timeline for that revelation. Jonathan Mitchell from Tech Titan contacted her with news that would transform her business from a promising startup into an industry phenomenon. Elena, I need to share something confidential. Tech Titan has been selected to present at the International Enterprise Technology Summit next month. Our CEO wants to include a presentation about your platform as a case study in operational innovation. This would be exposure to technology leaders from around the world. Elena absorbed this information while calculating the implications. The International Enterprise Technology Summit was attended by executives from every major corporation globally. A successful presentation would establish her platform as a recognized solution in the enterprise market and create opportunities for expansion she could barely imagine. What would the presentation format involve? You would present alongside our CEO, demonstrating how your platform achieved the results we've documented. The audience would include technology executives from Fortune 100 companies, venture capital firms, and industry analysts who influence purchasing decisions across entire sectors. Elena felt her pulse accelerate while her voice remained controlled. I would be honored to participate. Excellent. I should mention that this presentation will likely generate significant media attention. The summit is covered by major business publications, and innovative technology solutions typically receive substantial coverage. After ending the call, Elena sat in her office contemplating the magnitude of what was about to occur. Media coverage from the summit would make her success visible to everyone who had dismissed her potential, including her family. The worthless daughter they had tried to correct would be featured in business publications as an innovative technology leader. Elena opened her laptop and began preparing for a presentation that would announce her arrival as a major force in the enterprise software industry. Her family's ultimatum had 37 days remaining, but Elena Rodriguez was about to exceed their expectations in ways they could never have imagined. The summit presentation would mark the end of her anonymity and the beginning of recognition that would make their original assessment of her worth seem not just wrong, but embarrassingly short-sighted. The daughter they had dismissed was about to become impossible to ignore. The International Enterprise Technology Summit represented the pinnacle of industry recognition, where technology leaders from across the globe gathered to examine innovations that would shape business operations for the next decade. Elena Rodriguez stood in her hotel room overlooking San Francisco Bay, reviewing her presentation materials one final time before the most significant moment of her professional life. The past 3 weeks had transformed her understanding of what success could look like. The preparation for this presentation had required collaboration with Tech Titan's executive team, coordination with summit organizers, and the development of case study materials that documented her platform's impact with mathematical precision. Elena had learned to think beyond individual client relationships and consider how her solution could influence entire industries. Her presentation would demonstrate how her workflow optimization platform had generated $47 million in productivity improvements across Tech Titan's global operations within 6 months of implementation. The numbers were extraordinary, but they represented something more significant than financial impact. They proved that innovative thinking could challenge established approaches and deliver results that traditional solutions could not achieve. Elena's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah Chen, her lead developer, who was monitoring the European implementations from their main office. The text contained updates on 3 concurrent projects, each proceeding ahead of schedule and generating client satisfaction scores that exceeded industry benchmarks. Her team had mastered the art of enterprise-scale deployment, while maintaining the attention to detail that characterized their smaller engagements. The morning news program playing on her hotel television featured a segment about summit highlights, mentioning several presentations scheduled for the day. Elena's collaboration with Tech Titan was identified as one of the most anticipated demonstrations, described as showcasing breakthrough technology developed by an emerging industry leader. The reporter's description of her as an emerging leader struck Elena as both accurate and inadequate. She was emerging into visibility, but her capabilities had been developing systematically for years. Elena dressed in a navy suit that projected authority without ostentation, understanding that her appearance would be scrutinized by industry leaders who made rapid judgments about credibility based on visual presentation. She had learned that enterprise executives expected sophistication in every aspect of professional interaction, from technical competence to personal presentation standards. The summit venue occupied an entire convention center, with multiple presentation halls accommodating simultaneous sessions on different aspects of enterprise technology. Elena arrived early to familiarize herself with the presentation environment and ensure that her technical demonstration would function flawlessly. The stakes were too high to accept any possibility of equipment failure or coordination problems. Jonathan Mitchell met her in the speaker's preparation area, his expression mixing confidence with the focused tension that preceded high-stakes presentations. Tech Titan's CEO would introduce the case study, but Elena would deliver the technical demonstration and answer questions about her platform's capabilities. The arrangement positioned her as the technical expert while leveraging Tech Titan's corporate credibility. Elena, I want you to know that our board of directors has approved a statement of recommendation that we'll be sharing with summit attendees. Any company considering enterprise optimization solutions will receive our formal endorsement of your platform. Elena absorbed this information while calculating its implications. Tech Titan's recommendation would carry extraordinary weight with potential clients, effectively serving as a credential that could accelerate her sales process with other Fortune 500 companies. The endorsement represented validation that transcended financial success and established her reputation in the enterprise technology market. The presentation hall filled rapidly as the session time approached. Elena observed the audience composition from backstage, noting executives she recognized from business publications and technology conferences. These were decision-makers whose choices influenced corporate technology budgets measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. Their attention represented opportunities that could transform her company from a successful startup into a major industry force. Tech Titan's CEO delivered the introduction with corporate precision, outlining the operational challenges that had led them to seek innovative solutions and the criteria they had used to evaluate potential partners. His description of Elena emphasized her technical expertise and strategic insight while positioning her platform as a breakthrough rather than an incremental improvement. Elena stepped onto the stage with the controlled confidence of someone who had learned to command attention in environments where credibility was earned through demonstrated competence, rather than granted through position or reputation. The audience represented the culmination of everything she had worked toward, validation that her vision could compete with established industry leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, operational efficiency represents the difference between corporate success and stagnation in an increasingly competitive global market. Traditional workflow management systems were designed for organizational structures that no longer exist, communication patterns that have been revolutionized by digital technology, and decision-making processes that cannot adapt to the pace of modern business requirements. Quote, Elena's opening statement established the premise for everything that would follow. She had learned to frame her solution not as a product seeking customers, but as an answer to problems that every enterprise organization faced, regardless of industry or geographic location. The universality of workflow inefficiency created opportunities that transcended traditional market boundaries. The demonstration that followed showcased her platform's capabilities using real data from Tech Titan's implementation. Elena walked the audience through specific examples of productivity improvements, cost reductions, and decision-making acceleration that had been achieved through her workflow optimization algorithms. Each example was quantified with precise financial impact measurements that demonstrated return on investment with mathematical clarity. The manufacturing division experienced a 39% reduction in production cycle times while maintaining quality standards that exceeded previous performance benchmarks. Customer service response times improved by 52%, while reducing the number of escalated issues by 61%. Supply chain coordination achieved cost savings of $12 million annually through automated decision-making protocols that eliminated communication delays. Elena watched the audience absorb these numbers, noting which executives were taking notes and which seemed surprised by the magnitude of improvements she described. The data represented more than successful implementation. It demonstrated that her platform could deliver transformational rather than incremental change to enterprise operations. The technical portion of her presentation revealed the algorithmic innovations that enabled such dramatic improvements. Elena explained how machine learning capabilities allowed her platform to adapt to specific organizational patterns, while identifying optimization opportunities that human analysis might overlook. The sophistication of her technical approach distinguished her solution from generic workflow management tools that required extensive customization for each implementation. Questions from the audience revealed both genuine interest and healthy skepticism about claims that seemed almost too good to be true. Elena answered each inquiry with detailed explanations that demonstrated both technical depth and practical understanding of enterprise-scale challenges. Her responses consistently referenced specific examples from actual implementations rather than theoretical projections. Ms. Rodriguez asked a CEO from a major manufacturing company, "How do you ensure that your optimization algorithms don't compromise the compliance requirements that govern our industry operations?" Elena had anticipated this question and prepared a comprehensive response. Compliance integration represents a foundational element of our platform design rather than an afterthought. The algorithms are structured to enhance compliance monitoring capabilities while streamlining the processes that ensure regulatory adherence. TechTitan's implementation actually improved their compliance scores while achieving the productivity gains I've described. The session concluded with sustained applause that reflected genuine enthusiasm rather than polite acknowledgement. Elena gathered her materials while audience members approached the stage with business cards and requests for follow-up conversations. The immediate response validated everything she had hoped to achieve through summit participation. Jonathan Mitchell introduced her to executives from 6 Fortune 100 companies during the networking reception that followed her presentation. Each conversation revealed interest in demonstrations and potential implementations that could dwarf her current client engagements in both scope and financial value. Elena found herself scheduling meetings that would extend her travel calendar for the next month while creating opportunities that could accelerate her company's growth beyond her most ambitious projections. The business publication interviews that followed the presentation session provided Elena with her first experience managing media attention, focused on her personal achievements rather than her platform's capabilities. The reporters seemed particularly interested in her background, her age, and the timeline of her company's development. Their questions revealed that her success story would be positioned as inspirational rather than purely technical. Ms. Rodriguez, you're 28 years old, and you've developed technology that Fortune 500 companies are implementing globally. What advice would you give to other young entrepreneurs who want to achieve similar success? Elena considered her response carefully, understanding that her words would be published and potentially influence other aspiring entrepreneurs. She thought about her own journey, the rejections she had faced, the family dismissal that had catalyzed her determination to prove her worth through extraordinary achievement. Success requires the willingness to persist when others doubt your vision and the discipline to focus on creating value rather than seeking validation. The most important skill any entrepreneur can develop is the ability to convert rejection into motivation and criticism into fuel for improvement. The interview concluded with requests for follow-up conversations and photo shoots that would accompany the articles being prepared for publication. Elena realized that media attention would make her success visible to everyone who had previously dismissed her potential, including her family. The worthless daughter they had tried to redirect toward conventional employment would soon be featured in major business publications as an innovative technology leader. That evening, Elena returned to her hotel room and called Sarah Chen to discuss the opportunities that had emerged from the summit presentation. The immediate interest from multiple Fortune 100 companies would require expanding their team and capabilities significantly while maintaining the quality standards that had distinguished their previous implementations. We have requests for demonstrations from 8 companies, including 3 that would represent the largest implementations we've ever attempted, Elena reported. I need you to prepare expansion projections for engineering staff, project management resources, and infrastructure requirements. The conversation lasted 2 hours as they systematically planned the operational changes that would be necessary to pursue the opportunities emerging from summit exposure. Elena had learned that success created its own challenges, requiring constant adaptation and growth to meet demands that exceeded previous experience levels. After ending the call, Elena sat by her hotel window looking out at the San Francisco skyline and reflecting on the distance she had traveled from the family dinner table, where she had been dismissed as worthless. The transformation had required more than technical skill or business acumen. It had demanded the psychological resilience to persist when others doubted her capabilities, and the strategic thinking necessary to convert individual success into systematic achievement. Her phone displayed 17 missed calls from reporters, venture capital firms, and potential clients who had obtained her contact information through summit organizers. Elena realized that anonymity was ending and recognition was beginning, with all the opportunities and complications that visibility would create. She had 31 days remaining in her father's ultimatum, but Elena Rodriguez had already transcended their expectations in ways they could not have imagined. The summit presentation had established her as a recognized force in the enterprise technology industry, creating momentum that would accelerate her success beyond anything her family's limited vision could have encompassed. The worthless daughter they had dismissed was about to become impossible to ignore, and Elena was beginning to plan exactly how she would reveal the magnitude of their miscalculation. The first article appeared in TechCrunch 3 days after the summit, featuring a photograph of Elena Rodriguez presenting to an audience of Fortune 500 executives beneath the headline, "The 28-year-old who's revolutionizing enterprise operations." The piece detailed her platform's achievements, Tech Titan's $47 million productivity gains, and the industry attention her summit presentation had generated. Elena read the article over coffee in her expanded office space, noting how the journalist had positioned her story as proof that innovation could emerge from unexpected sources. The media coverage accelerated throughout the week as additional publications picked up the story. Forbes published a profile titled "Young Entrepreneur Disrupts Billion-Dollar Industry," while the Wall Street Journal featured her platform in their technology section as an example of artificial intelligence applications in corporate environments. Each article reinforced her credibility while expanding awareness of her achievements beyond the technology sector. Elena's assistant, hired just 2 weeks earlier to manage the increasing volume of meeting requests and media inquiries, handed her a schedule that reflected the dramatic expansion of professional demands. Demonstration requests from Fortune 100 companies filled the next 6 weeks. Venture capital firms had requested meetings to discuss funding opportunities, and industry conferences were extending speaking invitations for the following year. The transformation of her professional circumstances had occurred with stunning velocity. 3 months earlier, Elena had been working alone in her childhood bedroom, seeking validation from clients who represented significant achievements for a solo entrepreneur. Now she commanded attention from corporate executives whose decisions influenced global markets, and whose approval could establish her platform as an industry standard. Her development team had expanded to 18 employees, including senior engineers recruited from major technology companies who brought expertise in scaling software solutions for enterprise implementations. The hiring process had evolved from competing for talent to attracting professionals who wanted to join a recognized leader in workflow optimization technology. Sarah Chen approached Elena's office with updates on the multiple Fortune 100 implementations currently in development. The complexity of managing simultaneous projects for corporations with global operations had required systematic improvements in project management capabilities and resource allocation strategies. The global manufacturing deployment is proceeding according to schedule, with preliminary results showing productivity improvements that exceed our projections, Sarah reported. However, their European division has requested additional customization that would require 3 weeks of development time. The international logistics implementation has generated such positive initial results that they want to accelerate the timeline for their Asian operations. Elena reviewed the project status reports while calculating the resource requirements for meeting accelerated client demands. Success had created challenges she had not anticipated when her business operated at smaller scale. Each client wanted immediate attention and rapid implementation, but maintaining quality standards required careful management of development resources and implementation timelines. Schedule a meeting with the European customization team for Thursday morning. We need to understand their requirements before committing to timeline changes, Elena instructed. And prepare a resource analysis for the Asian expansion. We may need to hire additional developers to support multiple accelerated implementations simultaneously. The conversation continued for 30 minutes as they systematically reviewed each active project and planned resource allocation strategies that would maintain their quality standards while pursuing the opportunities emerging from increased market recognition. Elena had learned that managing rapid growth required constant attention to operational details that could determine whether expansion strengthened or compromised their competitive advantages. Elena's phone displayed notification after notification from LinkedIn, where her professional profile had gained thousands of new connections following the media coverage. Corporate executives, venture capital partners, and fellow entrepreneurs were requesting to join her professional network, creating opportunities for relationships that could influence her company's future development. The venture capital meetings scheduled for the following week represented a new category of opportunity that Elena was still learning to evaluate. Multiple firms had expressed interest in providing funding that could accelerate her expansion into international markets and support the development of additional platform capabilities. The potential investments involved amounts that dwarfed her current revenue, while offering resources that could transform her company from a successful startup into a major industry force. Elena spent the afternoon preparing for these conversations by researching the venture capital firms and understanding their investment criteria, portfolio companies, and strategic priorities. She had learned that institutional funding required more than demonstrated success. Investors wanted to understand her vision for long-term growth and her capability to execute strategies that could justify valuations measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. The preparation process forced Elena to articulate ambitions she had been developing intuitively rather than systematically. Her platform's current success represented validation of concept, but venture capital funding would enable expansion into adjacent markets, development of complementary technologies, and pursuit of acquisition opportunities that could accelerate growth beyond organic development timelines. As Elena worked late into the evening, developing strategic plans that reflected the scale of opportunities emerging from her increased visibility, her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. The message inquired about her job search progress and suggested that the family should discuss her living arrangements during dinner that weekend. The irony struck Elena with particular force. While her mother worried about her employment prospects, Elena was preparing to meet with investors who wanted to provide tens of millions of dollars to support her company's expansion. The worthless daughter her family had dismissed was negotiating opportunities that represented more wealth than they would accumulate collectively throughout their careers. Elena had 27 days remaining in her father's ultimatum, but the timeline had become irrelevant. The media coverage had created momentum that would make her success impossible to hide regardless of her family's awareness. Business publications were featuring her achievements, industry leaders were seeking her expertise, and investment firms were competing for opportunities to support her continued growth. The following morning brought a call from the producer of a major business television program, who wanted to schedule Elena for an interview that would air during their prime time slot. The program featured successful entrepreneurs whose innovations had transformed their industries, positioning Elena alongside established leaders whose companies had achieved billion-dollar valuations. Ms. Rodriguez, we're particularly interested in your perspective on how young entrepreneurs can compete with established corporations in enterprise markets, the producer explained. Your story represents proof that innovation and determination can overcome traditional barriers to entry. Elena agreed to the interview while understanding that television exposure would amplify her visibility beyond the business community to general audiences that included her family and everyone who had dismissed her entrepreneurial efforts. The interview would air during the following week, ensuring that her achievements would become knowledge that extended far beyond industry publications. The venture capital meetings began on Tuesday with a presentation to Partners Fund, a firm that specialized in enterprise technology investments and had supported several companies that achieved industry-leading positions. Elena entered their conference room carrying materials that documented her platform's technical capabilities, financial performance, and growth projections that reflected opportunities emerging from increased market recognition. The partners assembled for her presentation included individuals whose investment decisions had created several technology companies that Elena had studied as examples of successful scaling strategies. Their questions revealed sophisticated understanding of enterprise software markets and the challenges associated with building sustainable competitive advantages in rapidly evolving technology sectors. Elena, your current success is impressive, but we invest in companies that can achieve market leadership positions rather than simply profitable operations," the lead partner explained. "What's your vision for transforming workflow optimization from a service offering into a platform that defines how enterprises approach operational efficiency?" Elena had prepared for questions that challenged her to think beyond current achievements and articulate strategies for industry transformation rather than incremental growth. Her response outlined plans for expanding platform capabilities through artificial intelligence enhancements, developing industry-specific optimization modules, and creating integration partnerships that would position her solution as essential infrastructure for enterprise operations. "My platform currently addresses workflow inefficiencies that cost enterprises billions of dollars annually through manual processes and communication delays," Elena explained. "The next development phase will introduce predictive optimization capabilities that prevent inefficiencies before they occur, and adaptive algorithms that continuously improve operational performance without human intervention." The presentation concluded with discussion of valuation expectations and investment terms that reflected Elena's growing understanding of venture capital negotiations. The partners expressed strong interest in leading a funding round that would provide resources for international expansion and product development, while maintaining Elena's control over strategic direction. Similar conversations with 2 additional venture capital firms during the remainder of the week generated competing offers that reflected market recognition of her platform's potential and her capabilities as an entrepreneur who could execute ambitious growth strategies. Elena found herself evaluating investment opportunities that could accelerate her success beyond anything she had considered possible when her family dismissed her as worthless. The television interview was scheduled for Friday afternoon at a studio downtown that specialized in business programming. Elena arrived early to review her talking points and ensure that her presentation would effectively communicate her story to audiences who might be unfamiliar with enterprise technology markets. The interviewer began with questions about her background and the development of her platform, providing Elena with opportunities to explain how she had identified market opportunities that established companies had overlooked. The conversation evolved to focus on her advice for aspiring entrepreneurs who wanted to challenge established industries with innovative solutions. "Elena, you've achieved extraordinary success at an age when many people are still determining their career direction. What would you tell someone who's facing skepticism about their entrepreneurial ambitions?" Elena considered her response while thinking about her own experience with family rejection and the transformation that had resulted from converting criticism into motivation for exceptional achievement. Her answer would be broadcast to audiences that included aspiring entrepreneurs who might be struggling with similar challenges. Skepticism often reflects limited understanding rather than accurate assessment of potential. The most important skill any entrepreneur can develop is the ability to distinguish between constructive criticism that identifies genuine problems and dismissive judgment that reveals more about the critic than the opportunity being evaluated. The interview concluded with Elena discussing her plans for continued growth and her perspective on the future of enterprise technology. As she left the studio, Elena realized that the television broadcast would ensure that her success became visible to everyone who had questioned her judgment, including her family members who had dismissed her entrepreneurial efforts as fantasy. Elena returned to her office to find Sarah Chen waiting with news that would accelerate her timeline for revealing her achievements to her family. The TechCrunch article had been shared extensively on social media, generating attention that extended beyond business audiences to general readers who found her story inspirational. Elena, your high school economics teacher, posted the Forbes article on Facebook with a comment about how proud she is of your success. It's been shared over 200 times, including by several people who tagged your family members in the comments. Elena absorbed this information while understanding that social media attention would make her achievements visible to her family within days rather than weeks. The worthless daughter they had dismissed was about to become impossible to ignore, and Elena needed to decide whether to control the revelation or allow them to discover her success through external sources. The telephone interview with her family had become inevitable, but Elena was approaching it with resources, recognition, and confidence that would transform the conversation from defensive explanation to undeniable demonstration of achievement. Her 27 days had become irrelevant because Elena Rodriguez had already proven her worth beyond any doubt they could maintain. Victoria Rodriguez Chen sat in her corner office at Prestige and Associates, reviewing contract documents for a merger that would earn the firm substantial fees while advancing her partnership prospects. Her phone buzzed with a Facebook notification, which she typically ignored during business hours. However, the preview showed a tag from her former colleague Jennifer Martinez, who rarely posted content related to professional matters. The notification read, "Isn't this your sister? So inspiring." Victoria clicked through to discover the Forbes article featuring Elena, complete with a professional photograph of her presenting to an audience of corporate executives. The headline declared Elena a rising star in enterprise technology, while the article detailed achievements that seemed impossible to reconcile with Victoria's understanding of her sister's circumstances. Victoria read the article twice, each pass revealing details that challenged her fundamental assumptions about Elena's activities over the past 3 years. The platform described in Forbes was generating millions in revenue from Fortune 500 clients. Elena was being quoted as an industry expert whose innovations had revolutionized workflow optimization for global corporations. The worthless sister Victoria had dismissed at Thanksgiving dinner was apparently commanding attention from business leaders whose decisions influenced entire industries. The photograph accompanying the article showed Elena addressing an audience at the International Enterprise Technology Summit, positioned as an authority whose insights were sought by established corporate executives. Victoria studied the image, searching for evidence that might contradict the narrative being presented. Elena appeared confident, professional, and completely comfortable in an environment that Victoria herself had never accessed, despite her legal career advancement. Victoria's initial reaction combined disbelief with growing concern about the implications for her own professional reputation. She had spent months describing Elena's entrepreneurial efforts as delusional fantasy to colleagues who now might discover that her assessment had been catastrophically incorrect. The sister she had dismissed as an embarrassment was apparently achieving success that exceeded anything Victoria had accomplished in her legal career. She forwarded the article to Marcus with a message that attempted to maintain her skeptical perspective while acknowledging the undeniable evidence of Elena's achievements. "Did you see this? Apparently Elena's computer thing is bigger than we thought. Still seems risky to me, but the numbers are impressive." Marcus Rodriguez was completing his morning rounds at Metropolitan General Hospital when Victoria's message arrived. He opened the Forbes link while walking between patient rooms, expecting to find modest coverage of Elena's small business that had been inflated by journalistic enthusiasm for startup success stories. The article content forced Marcus to stop walking and find a private area where he could process what he was reading without interruption from hospital colleagues. Elena was described as the founder of a technology company that had generated $47 million in productivity improvements for a single client. Her platform was being implemented by multiple Fortune 500 corporations, with expansion plans that suggested revenues measured in tens of millions of dollars annually. Marcus had spent years describing Elena's entrepreneurial efforts as avoidance of real work, contrasting her unstructured activities with his disciplined pursuit of medical expertise. The Forbes article revealed that while he had been learning to treat patients within established medical protocols, Elena had been building technology solutions that influenced operational efficiency for companies employing hundreds of thousands of people. The financial implications were particularly striking to Marcus, whose medical residency provided modest compensation despite requiring expertise that had taken years to develop. Elena's platform was apparently generating revenue that exceeded physician salaries by substantial margins, while creating value that corporate executives considered essential for competitive operations. Marcus called Victoria immediately, needing to discuss the article with someone who shared his previous understanding of Elena's limitations. Victoria answered on the first ring, her voice reflecting the same combination of surprise and concern that Marcus was experiencing. "Victoria, did you read the entire article? The revenue numbers they're reporting seem impossible for someone who was living in mom and dad's house 6 months ago. I read it 3 times. Either Elena has been hiding this from us, or these journalists are exaggerating significantly. But the companies mentioned are real, and their executives are quoted in the article. What does this mean for the ultimatum Dad gave her? He told her to get a real job or move out, but apparently she's been running a multi-million-dollar company the entire time. Victoria had been considering the same question while trying to reconcile Elena's apparent success with their family's understanding of her circumstances. The ultimatum had been based on the assumption that Elena needed guidance toward conventional employment because her entrepreneurial efforts were failing to provide sustainable income. We need to verify this information before jumping to conclusions. Maybe the articles are promotional rather than factual. Startups often inflate their achievements to attract investors. Marcus agreed to research Elena's company independently, while Victoria investigated the credibility of the publications featuring her sister's achievements. They ended the call with plans to reconvene after gathering additional information that might clarify whether Elena's apparent success represented genuine achievement or sophisticated marketing deception. Elena's parents discovered their daughter's business success through a more direct channel. Robert Rodriguez was having coffee with fellow accounting professionals when colleague David Kim approached their table with visible excitement about a business story he wanted to share. "Robert, I have to show you this article about innovative technology companies. There's a young entrepreneur whose optimization platform is revolutionizing enterprise operations. The story is remarkable because she's achieving this success despite being dismissed by traditional business leaders." David handed Robert his tablet displaying the TechCrunch article featuring Elena. Robert's expression shifted from polite interest to confused recognition as he processed the headline and accompanying photograph of his daughter presenting to corporate executives. "David, this is my daughter Elena." The statement created immediate silence at their table as Robert's colleagues absorbed the implications of what they were reading. Elena Rodriguez, whom Robert had described as struggling with unrealistic business fantasies, was apparently commanding respect from Fortune 500 executives and generating revenue that dwarfed most traditional professional practices. "Robert, your daughter has built something extraordinary. According to this article, her platform has saved Tech Titan Industries $47 million in operational costs. That's the kind of achievement that transforms entire careers." Robert read the article while his colleagues offered congratulations that felt premature given his understanding of Elena's actual circumstances. The disconnect between the achievements described in TechCrunch and his recent ultimatum demanding that Elena abandon her entrepreneurial efforts created cognitive dissonance that he struggled to resolve. Margaret Rodriguez learned about Elena's success when her sister called from Portland with news that had been circulating among their extended family through social media connections. Elena's achievements had become a topic of celebration among relatives who remembered her childhood curiosity about technology and her determination to pursue unconventional goals. "Margaret, I just saw the Forbes article about Elena. I'm so proud of her success, and I wanted to congratulate you on raising such an innovative daughter. The technology industry is dominated by male executives, so Elena's leadership position is particularly impressive." Margaret requested that her sister send the article link while attempting to maintain composure, despite her growing realization that Elena's apparent achievements contradicted everything their family had assumed about her business activities. The Forbes profile described Elena as a rising industry leader whose platform had attracted attention from major corporations and venture capital firms seeking investment opportunities. The article included quotes from Tech Titan's CEO describing Elena as a strategic partner whose innovations had exceeded their operational improvement projections. Corporate executives praised her technical expertise and business acumen in language that suggested genuine respect for her capabilities rather than promotional enthusiasm. Margaret read the article while Robert reviewed the TechCrunch piece, both parents struggling to reconcile the documented evidence of Elena's success with their recent decision to issue an ultimatum based on the assumption that her entrepreneurial efforts represented avoidance of responsibility rather than extraordinary achievement. "Robert, how is this possible? Elena has been living in our house, eating dinner with us every night she's home, never mentioning clients or revenue or any of the achievements described in these articles." Robert had been considering the same question while reviewing additional coverage of Elena's company in business publications that consistently described her as an emerging leader in enterprise technology. The evidence of her success was documented across multiple credible sources and corroborated by corporate executives whose reputations would be compromised by false endorsements. She must have been developing this business quietly while letting us assume it was unsuccessful. The ultimatum we gave her was based on incomplete information about her actual circumstances. The conversation continued as Robert and Margaret attempted to understand how their assessment of Elena's capabilities had been so dramatically incorrect. The daughter they had dismissed as unrealistic was apparently achieving success that exceeded anything their family had previously accomplished, while maintaining discretion that had prevented them from recognizing her transformation. Elena's phone began displaying missed calls from family members throughout the afternoon as news of her achievements spread through their social networks. She observed the incoming calls while meeting with potential investors who were offering funding that would accelerate her expansion into international markets and support development of additional platform capabilities. The irony of the timing was not lost on Elena. While her family frantically attempted to contact her about their discovery of her success, she was negotiating opportunities that represented more wealth than they would accumulate throughout their collective careers. The worthless daughter they had dismissed was discussing valuation projections that measured her company's potential in hundreds of millions of dollars. Elena chose not to answer their calls immediately, understanding that the conversations would require careful management to address their misconceptions while maintaining focus on her business priorities. The ultimate deadline her father had established was 23 days away, but the timeline had become irrelevant given the external revelation of her achievements. Sarah Chen knocked on Elena's office door with updates on the media coverage that was accelerating awareness of their company beyond business audiences. The Forbes article had been shared extensively on social media platforms, generating attention from aspiring entrepreneurs who found Elena's story inspirational and from industry professionals who wanted to learn more about her platform's capabilities. Elena, we've received 47 demonstration requests since the Forbes article published this morning. 6 Fortune 100 companies have specifically mentioned the article when requesting meetings, and 3 venture capital firms have called to schedule follow-up conversations about funding opportunities. Elena reviewed the list of inquiries while calculating the resources that would be required to pursue the opportunities emerging from increased visibility. Success was creating demands that exceeded her current organizational capacity, requiring systematic expansion of her team and capabilities to maintain the quality standards that had distinguished her previous implementations. The challenge of managing her family's reaction to discovering her success would need to be balanced against the operational requirements of scaling her business to meet accelerating market demand. Elena had proven her worth beyond any doubt they could maintain, but she had not yet decided how to manage the transition from their dismissal to their inevitable requests for reconciliation. Elena's assistant entered with a message that would influence her approach to the family conversations that had become unavoidable. The television interview was scheduled to air the following evening, ensuring that her achievements would receive additional exposure that extended far beyond business publications to general audiences that included everyone who had dismissed her entrepreneurial ambitions. Elena Rodriguez had spent 3 years building something extraordinary while her family assumed she was avoiding responsibility. Their discovery of her success was creating urgency for conversations that would address years of misconceptions and establish new foundations for their relationships. The worthless daughter they had tried to redirect was about to demonstrate that their limitations had never applied to her potential. Elena Rodriguez observed her phone display 17 missed calls from family members while she conducted a conference call with executives from 3 Fortune 100 companies who were discussing potential implementations worth a combined $68 million. The juxtaposition struck her as representative of the transformation that had occurred over the preceding months. While her family scrambled to understand achievements they had dismissed as impossible, Elena was negotiating opportunities that validated her vision beyond any doubt they could maintain. The conference call concluded with tentative agreement on implementation timelines that would establish Elena's platform as the optimization solution for companies operating across multiple continents. Each contract represented validation of her technical capabilities and strategic insight, while providing resources that would accelerate her expansion into markets she was only beginning to explore. Elena ended the call and reviewed the missed call log systematically, noting the progression from individual family members to repeated attempts from her parents' home number. The frequency suggested escalating urgency as they processed the magnitude of their miscalculation about her worth and capabilities. Sarah Chen knocked on Elena's office door with a schedule update that required immediate attention. The television interview was confirmed for the following evening, with additional media requests arriving hourly as business publications competed to feature Elena's story. The public relations firm she had retained was recommending a strategic approach to media engagement that would position her as an thought leader while maintaining focus on her platform's capabilities rather than personal narrative details. Elena, the producer from Financial Times, wants to schedule a follow-up interview about your perspective on enterprise technology trends. Bloomberg has requested a feature about young entrepreneurs disrupting established industries. And 3 industry conferences have extended speaking invitations for presentations about innovation in workflow optimization. Elena reviewed the media opportunities while calculating how public visibility would affect her family's understanding of her achievements. Television exposure would ensure that her success became widely known beyond business publications, creating awareness that would make denial or minimization impossible for anyone who had dismissed her potential. Accept the Financial Times interview for next week, decline Bloomberg for now but request a follow-up conversation in 30 days. And confirm the conference speaking engagement for the International Business Technology Summit in 6 months. Elena's strategic approach to managing her newly visible success included controlling the narrative timeline to ensure that her achievements were documented comprehensively before engaging in family conversations that would inevitably focus on their previous misconceptions. She intended to establish undeniable credibility through external validation before addressing their inevitable attempts at reconciliation. The first call she returned was to Victoria, understanding that her sister's legal training would require addressing the documentation and verification of Elena's business achievements before emotional conversations could proceed productively. Victoria answered on the first ring, her voice carrying uncharacteristic hesitation that suggested carefully prepared talking points. Elena, I read the Forbes article about your company. I wanted to congratulate you on your apparent success and understand more about what you've been building. The phrase apparent success revealed Victoria's continued skepticism despite overwhelming evidence of Elena's achievements. Elena responded with the professional tone she had developed for addressing corporate executives who required comprehensive information before making significant decisions. Thank you for calling, Victoria. The Forbes article provides accurate information about our current operations and client relationships. Tech Titan Industries has documented $47 million in productivity improvements from our platform implementation, and we are currently managing similar projects for multiple Fortune 500 companies. Elena, I have to ask directly, are the revenue figures mentioned in these articles accurate? Because the numbers seem inconsistent with living at home and asking for family support. Elena had anticipated this question and prepared a response that would address Victoria's concerns while establishing the foundation for future conversations about their relationship dynamics. She opened her laptop and accessed her business banking dashboard, preparing to provide verification that would eliminate any doubt about her financial circumstances. Victoria, I can provide documentation of our current revenue and client contracts if you prefer verification to speculation. Our quarterly revenue exceeds the annual income of most established professional practices, including law firms of the size where you work. The statement created silence that Elena allowed to extend while Victoria processed the implications of what she was hearing. Elena's success was not marginal achievement that might be inflated by enthusiastic journalism. Her company was generating substantial revenue from prestigious clients whose endorsements established credibility that transcended promotional claims. If that's accurate, why have you been living at home and allowing us to believe your business was struggling? Elena considered her response carefully, understanding that this conversation would establish the framework for addressing years of dismissal and condescension that had characterized their family's treatment of her entrepreneurial efforts. She chose to focus on facts rather than emotions, maintaining the professional demeanor that had served her effectively in business negotiations. I maintained residence at home because it provided operational convenience while building the business. I allowed you to maintain your assumptions because correcting them required no action on my part and provided no benefit to my objectives. The bluntness of Elena's response revealed her transformation from someone seeking family approval to someone who no longer required their validation or support. Victoria's continued questions reflected growing awareness that her understanding of Elena's circumstances had been fundamentally incorrect. Elena, we had no idea you were achieving this level of success. The ultimatum Dad gave you was based on our concern about your future financial stability. If we had known about your business performance, we would have responded very differently. Elena absorbed Victoria's statement, while noting the implicit admission that their family's judgment had been based on incomplete information, rather than accurate assessment of her capabilities. The revelation created opportunities for education about the consequences of dismissive assumptions, while establishing new foundations for their relationship. Victoria, the information you lacked was available through direct inquiry at any point during the past 3 years. You chose to make assumptions rather than seeking understanding, and those assumptions influenced your advice and behavior toward me. The conversation continued for 20 minutes as Victoria attempted to reconcile her previous assessment of Elena's limitations with the documented evidence of extraordinary achievement. Elena provided additional verification of her business success while maintaining emotional distance that prevented the conversation from devolving into recriminations about past treatment. Elena's second call was to Marcus, whose medical training she expected would appreciate systematic presentation of evidence before drawing conclusions about changed circumstances. Marcus answered with characteristic directness, though his voice carried undertones of uncertainty that suggested careful consideration of how to approach the conversation. Elena, I saw the articles about your technology company. The achievements described seem remarkable, and I wanted to understand more about what you've been working on. Elena provided Marcus with the same professional summary she had given Victoria, focusing on objective documentation of her platform's capabilities and market reception, rather than personal reflections about family dynamics. She understood that establishing credibility through factual presentation would be more effective than emotional appeals for recognition. Marcus, our platform has demonstrated consistent ability to improve operational efficiency for large corporations by 30 to 50% within 6 months of implementation. We currently maintain contracts with 8 Fortune 500 companies, with additional implementations scheduled throughout the next year. Elena, these numbers represent significant business achievement. I have to admit that my understanding of your activities was completely incorrect. The success you've documented exceeds anything I expected from entrepreneurial ventures, particularly in technology sectors. Marcus's acknowledgement of his misconceptions provided Elena with opportunities to address the broader patterns of dismissal that had characterized their family's response to her unconventional career choices. She chose to focus on education rather than confrontation, understanding that sustainable relationship improvement required addressing underlying assumptions rather than simply correcting specific instances of poor judgment. Marcus, entrepreneurship in technology sectors can achieve rapid scaling that exceeds traditional professional career trajectories when market demand exists for innovative solutions. The revenue growth we've experienced reflects client recognition of value rather than speculative investment or promotional enthusiasm. The conversation with Marcus proved more productive than the exchange with Victoria, partially because his scientific training encouraged evidence-based conclusion modification rather than defensive rationalization of previous positions. Elena provided additional documentation of her achievements while offering insights about technology entrepreneurship that addressed his genuine curiosity about her success mechanisms. Elena's parents requested a family meeting for the following evening, proposing to discuss their discovery of her business achievements and their interest in understanding her actual circumstances. Elena agreed to the meeting while establishing parameters that would ensure productive conversation, rather than emotional confrontation, about years of dismissive treatment. I can meet tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock for 90 minutes to discuss my business activities and answer questions about my current circumstances. The conversation should focus on factual information rather than retrospective analysis of previous family dynamics. Elena's specification of meeting parameters reflected her transformation from someone who accepted whatever family dynamics were imposed to someone who established boundaries that served her objectives. She would provide information about her achievements while maintaining control over conversation direction and duration. The preparation for this family meeting required Elena to organize documentation that would comprehensively demonstrate her business success, while anticipating questions that might reflect continued skepticism or attempts to minimize her achievements. She assembled client testimonials, revenue reports, media coverage, and industry recognition that would eliminate any possibility of dismissing her success as temporary or illusory. Elena also prepared responses to predictable attempts at reconciliation that might focus on family relationships, rather than acknowledging the magnitude of their misjudgment about her capabilities. She intended to address their discovery of her success professionally, while establishing expectations for future interactions that reflected her transformed circumstances. The television interview was scheduled for 6 o'clock the following evening, 1 hour before her family meeting. Elena realized that the timing would ensure that her parents could watch her being featured as an industry expert immediately before attempting to discuss their previous assessment of her as a failure requiring intervention. Elena spent the afternoon reviewing her presentation materials for the television interview while responding to additional demonstration requests from Fortune 100 companies whose executives had read about her platform in business publications. The momentum created by media coverage was accelerating opportunities faster than she had projected, requiring systematic expansion of her operational capabilities to pursue contracts that could establish her company as a dominant force in enterprise optimization technology. Sarah Chen provided updates on the hiring process for additional development staff and project managers who would support the implementations emerging from increased market recognition. Elena's company was evolving from a successful startup to a substantial organization that employed professionals whose expertise complemented her technical capabilities and business insight. Elena, we have offers pending with 6 senior developers and 3 project managers who would expand our capacity for managing multiple Fortune 500 implementations simultaneously. The total compensation packages represent significant investment, but the revenue projections from confirmed contracts justify the expansion. Elena approved the hiring recommendations while reviewing financial projections that reflected her company's transformation into a major enterprise technology provider. The worthless daughter her family had dismissed was building something that challenged established industry leaders, while creating value that corporate executives considered essential for competitive operations. Elena's assistant confirmed the television interview logistics while providing updated schedules that reflected the accelerating demands of her public recognition. Industry conferences, media interviews, and client presentations filled the next 3 months, establishing Elena as a sought-after expert whose insights were valued by business leaders across multiple sectors. As the day concluded, Elena reviewed the strategic position she had established for addressing her family's discovery of her success. She possessed documentation of extraordinary achievement, recognition from industry leaders, and financial resources that exceeded their collective accomplishments. The worthless daughter they had tried to redirect was about to demonstrate that their limitations had never applied to her potential. Elena Rodriguez had spent 3 years building something remarkable, while her family assumed she was avoiding responsibility. Their discovery of her success was creating opportunities for conversations that would establish new foundations for their relationships, based on accurate understanding of her capabilities, rather than dismissive assumptions about her limitations. The television interview would provide additional validation, while the family meeting would address years of misconceptions with the authority of someone whose worth had been proven beyond any doubt. The television studio at Business Network International commanded panoramic views of the financial district, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the late afternoon sun across polished surfaces that had hosted countless interviews with industry leaders whose decisions influenced global markets. Elena Rodriguez arrived 30 minutes before her scheduled appearance, carrying documentation that would support her discussion of enterprise technology trends and the disruption potential of innovative optimization solutions. The producer briefed Elena on the interview format, while makeup artists prepared her for high-definition cameras that would broadcast her insights to audiences measuring in the millions. The program featured successful entrepreneurs whose innovations had transformed their respective industries, positioning Elena alongside established leaders whose companies had achieved billion-dollar valuations through strategic vision and operational excellence. Ms. Rodriguez, our audience includes corporate executives, venture capital investors, and aspiring entrepreneurs who want to understand how breakthrough technologies emerge from unexpected sources. The producer explained, "Your story represents proof that innovation can challenge established industry assumptions when vision meets systematic execution." Elena reviewed her talking points while observing the studio environment, where business leaders regularly discussed strategies that influenced market trends and investment decisions. The interview would establish her credibility beyond technology circles to general business audiences that included potential clients, investors, and competitors who would evaluate her platform's capabilities based on her public presentation. The host, Richard Sterling, had built his reputation through interviews that revealed the strategic thinking behind extraordinary business achievements. His questions consistently probed deeper than promotional statements to explore the decision-making processes and competitive advantages that distinguished successful entrepreneurs from those whose innovations failed to achieve market adoption. Elena, welcome to Business Leadership Today. Your platform has achieved remarkable success with Fortune 500 clients in an incredibly short time frame. Let's begin with the fundamental question. How does a 28-year-old entrepreneur compete successfully with established technology companies that have dominated enterprise markets for decades? Elena had prepared for this opening question by developing a response that would demonstrate strategic insight, while establishing her credibility as someone who understood enterprise markets at sophisticated levels, rather than simply offering innovative products seeking applications. Richard, established technology companies often optimize their solutions for broad market applications, rather than specific operational challenges that individual enterprises face. Our platform addresses workflow inefficiencies with customization capabilities that deliver measurable improvements, rather than generic productivity enhancements that require extensive adaptation for practical implementation. The results you've achieved with Tech Titan Industries represent $47 million in documented productivity improvements. Those numbers suggest your platform delivers transformational rather than incremental value. What enables such dramatic operational improvements? Elena proceeded to explain the algorithmic innovations that distinguished her platform from conventional workflow management systems, emphasizing machine learning capabilities that adapted to organizational patterns while identifying optimization opportunities that human analysis might overlook. Her explanation balanced technical sophistication with practical applications that business audiences could understand and evaluate. Traditional workflow systems impose standardized processes on organizations, rather than learning from existing operational patterns and improving them systematically. Our platform analyzes communication flows, decision-making bottlenecks, and resource allocation inefficiencies to create customized optimization strategies that enhance rather than replace established business processes. Sterling's follow-up questions revealed his preparation for addressing skepticism that audiences might maintain about claims that seemed almost too impressive to be accurate. His inquiries focused on verification mechanisms and implementation challenges that would test Elena's depth of understanding about enterprise-scale technology deployment. Elena, enterprise executives are naturally skeptical of optimization claims that promise substantial improvements without significant operational disruption. How do you address their concerns about implementation risks and performance verification? Elena had anticipated this question through her experience with corporate clients who required comprehensive risk assessment before committing to technology investments that could affect thousands of employees and millions of dollars in operational costs. We provide performance guarantees that include full refunds and compensation for productivity losses if our platform fails to achieve projected improvements within specified timeframes. Enterprise executives respond positively to accountability rather than promotional promises, and our guarantee demonstrates confidence in our platform's capabilities. The interview continued for 18 minutes as Sterling explored Elena's perspective on technology entrepreneurship, her advice for aspiring innovators, and her projections for the future of enterprise optimization solutions. Elena's responses consistently demonstrated strategic thinking that positioned her as an industry expert whose insights extended beyond her specific platform to broader trends affecting corporate operations. Elena, your success challenges conventional assumptions about entrepreneurial timelines and the resources required to compete in enterprise markets. What would you tell aspiring entrepreneurs who face skepticism about their innovative ideas? Elena considered her response while thinking about her own experience with family dismissal and the transformation that had resulted from converting criticism into motivation for extraordinary achievement. Her answer would be broadcast to audiences that included entrepreneurs struggling with similar challenges to those she had faced. Skepticism often reflects the limitations of the critic rather than the potential of the innovation being evaluated. The most important capability any entrepreneur can develop is the ability to distinguish between constructive feedback that identifies genuine problems and dismissive judgment that reveals more about established thinking patterns than market opportunities. Sterling concluded the interview by asking Elena to discuss her expansion plans and her vision for the future of workflow optimization technology. Elena outlined strategies for international growth and additional platform capabilities that would position her company as a comprehensive solution for enterprise operational challenges. The interview concluded with sustained applause from the studio audience, which included business professionals who had requested tickets to observe the taping. Elena gathered her materials while audience members approached with business cards and requests for follow-up conversations about potential collaborations and consulting opportunities. Elena left the studio and drove directly to her parents' house for the family meeting that would address their discovery of her business achievements. The timing ensured that her television appearance would provide additional context for their conversation about the magnitude of their miscalculation regarding her capabilities and potential. She arrived at the familiar house where she had been dismissed as worthless just weeks earlier, carrying documentation of success that exceeded their collective professional accomplishments, while maintaining the emotional composure of someone who no longer required their validation or approval. The living room had been arranged for formal discussion rather than casual family interaction, with chairs positioned to facilitate conversation while maintaining appropriate distance for addressing topics that involve significant relationship dynamic adjustments. Elena's parents sat together on the sofa, their expressions mixing curiosity with uncertainty about how to approach acknowledgement of their previous misjudgments. Victoria and Marcus arrived within minutes of Elena, their presence completing the family assembly that would address 3 years of dismissive assumptions through confrontation with documented evidence of extraordinary achievement. Elena observed their discomfort while noting that the power dynamics had shifted completely from their previous interactions. "Elena, we watched your television interview this evening before you arrived," her father began. "The achievements you discussed exceed anything we understood about your business activities. We need to discuss our previous conversations in light of this new information." Elena had prepared for this opening by organizing her response to address their acknowledgement, while establishing foundations for future interactions that reflected accurate understanding of her circumstances, rather than continued assumptions based on outdated information. The information presented during the television interview represents accurate documentation of our platform's performance and market reception. The business achievements discussed have been developing systematically over the past 3 years, while you maintained assumptions about my activities that were based on incomplete inquiry rather than factual assessment. Elena's response established the framework for conversation that would focus on documented reality rather than emotional processing of their previous treatment. She opened her portfolio and distributed copies of client testimonials, revenue reports, and industry recognition that would eliminate any possibility of questioning the authenticity of her success. These documents provide verification of our current business performance, including contracts with Fortune 500 companies, revenue projections for the next fiscal year, and endorsements from corporate executives whose opinions influence technology purchasing decisions across multiple industries. Elena's mother reviewed the documentation while attempting to reconcile the evidence with her understanding of Elena's circumstances during the preceding months. The financial statements revealed revenue streams that exceeded their household income by substantial margins, while client testimonials demonstrated appreciation for Elena's expertise from business leaders they recognized from media coverage. "Elena, these numbers represent significant financial success. We had no understanding that your business was generating this level of revenue or attracting clients of this caliber. Our concerns about your future stability were based on incomplete information about your actual circumstances." Elena acknowledged her mother's statement while maintaining focus on establishing accurate understanding rather than dwelling on their previous misconceptions. She proceeded to explain the strategic decisions that had enabled her platform's rapid market adoption and the operational capabilities that distinguished her solution from competitive alternatives. The revenue growth documented in these reports reflects client recognition of measurable value rather than speculative investment or promotional enthusiasm. Enterprise executives commit to technology implementations based on demonstrated capabilities rather than potential benefits, and our client retention rates validate the operational improvements we deliver. Marcus requested detailed explanation of Elena's platform's technical capabilities, his scientific training encouraging systematic understanding of the innovations that had generated such impressive business results. Elena provided comprehensive analysis of her algorithmic approaches, while demonstrating the machine learning capabilities that enabled continuous optimization improvements. Victoria focused her questions on the business development strategies that had enabled Elena to secure Fortune 500 clients, despite competing with established technology companies that possessed substantial resources and market recognition. Elena explained her approach to customization and performance guarantees that differentiated her platform from generic solutions requiring extensive adaptation. The conversation continued for the full 90 minutes Elena had allocated, during which she systematically addressed their questions while providing education about technology, entrepreneurship, and the market dynamics that had enabled her rapid success. Her family's understanding of her achievements evolved from skeptical amazement to genuine recognition of her extraordinary capabilities. Elena's father acknowledged the magnitude of his misjudgment about her potential, while requesting opportunities to understand her business model more comprehensively. His admission represented significant departure from his previous dismissive attitude, while creating possibilities for relationship reconstruction based on accurate assessment of her accomplishments. Elena, the ultimatum I provided was based on fundamental misunderstanding of your circumstances and capabilities. Your achievements exceed anything our family has accomplished professionally, and I need to acknowledge the error in my assessment of your potential. Elena accepted his acknowledgement while maintaining emotional distance that prevented the conversation from shifting toward reconciliation attempts that might compromise her strategic position. She had proven her worth beyond any doubt they could maintain, but forgiveness and relationship repair would require time and demonstrated changes in their treatment of her decisions. The ultimatum reflected your understanding of my circumstances at that time. The documentation I have provided should correct any misconceptions about my current business performance and future growth projections. Our family relationships can evolve based on accurate information, rather than assumptions that proved incorrect. Elena concluded the meeting by establishing expectations for future interactions that reflected her transformed circumstances, while maintaining boundaries that protected her from resumed dismissive treatment. She had demonstrated extraordinary achievement while offering opportunities for their education about her actual capabilities and potential. The drive back to her downtown apartment provided Elena with opportunity to reflect on the completion of her transformation, from family disappointment to recognized industry leader. The television interview had established her credibility with national business audiences, while the family meeting had addressed years of misconceptions through direct confrontation with undeniable evidence of success. Elena Rodriguez had spent 3 years building something remarkable, while her family assumed she was avoiding responsibility. Their discovery of her achievements had created opportunities for relationship reconstruction based on respect rather than condescension, though forgiveness would require more than acknowledgement of their previous errors in judgment. The worthless daughter they had dismissed was now positioned to continue building her empire while maintaining control over family dynamics that had once been sources of pain and frustration. Elena had proven her worth through extraordinary achievement while establishing foundations for future success that would exceed even her current remarkable accomplishments. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.